The Anfield empire is crumbling to consecutive defeats. £400 million spent, and Jamie Carragher just declared he doesn't feel like he's watching a top team anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, Liverpool are in absolute crisis. Before we dive into this chaos, drop a comment right now telling us where you're watching from and whether you think Arne Slot can turn this around. Let's see how global this Liverpool fan base really is, and more importantly, let's hear if you Reds are panicking yet or still backing your manager. Right, let's get straight into it, because what we witnessed against Galatasaray on Tuesday night wasn't just a bad result. It was a complete systematic breakdown of everything that made Liverpool champions just 5 months ago. And with Chelsea waiting at Stamford Bridge this weekend, Slot is staring down the barrel of 3 consecutive defeats for the first time since he arrived at Anfield in summer 2024. That's uncharted territory for a manager who won the Premier League title in his debut season. Carragher didn't mince his words after that 1-0 loss in Istanbul. Liverpool are not playing football at the moment, he told CBS Sports. They are playing basketball. It's just end-to-end, and I don't think top teams play like that. Brutal, honest, and unfortunately for Slot, absolutely accurate. The former Liverpool defender continued pointing out something crucial that many fans have been thinking but perhaps were not brave enough to say. They have sprinkled a bit of stardust on it in terms of the transfers they have brought in. But they haven't gained anything going forward, and they've lost a lot defensively. That's the fundamental issue we're dealing with here. Liverpool spent over £400 million bringing in some of Europe's most exciting talent. Florian Wirtz from Bayer Leverkusen, Alexander Isak from Newcastle, Jeremie Frimpong, also from Leverkusen, and others. Yet somehow, the only player who's made an instant impact is Hugo Ekitike. Let that sink in for a moment. So what exactly has gone wrong? Let's break down the 6 major problems Arne Slot needs to fix immediately. Problem number 1, the Florian Wirtz conundrum. Let us address the elephant in the room, the £100 million man who was supposed to be the heir to Mohamed Salah's throne. Florian Wirtz arrived at Anfield with a reputation as one of the most exciting attacking midfielders in world football. The 22-year-old German international was sensational for Leverkusen, gliding past defenders, creating chances at will, and scoring goals that had Europe's elite scrambling for their checkbooks. But right now, he looks lost, completely and utterly lost. 0 goals, 0 assists, and increasingly, 0 confidence. Now, before the Wirtz defenders come for me in the comments, and trust me, I know you're there, let's be fair to the kid. He's created 21 chances in all competitions this season. That's tied with Jack Grealish for the most in the Premier League, and everyone's currently lauding Grealish for his return to form at Everton. So clearly, Wirtz is doing something right. But here's the problem, creating chances means nothing if your team isn't winning games. And Carragher is right when he says Wirtz looks like he is just not at the races at all. The intensity of English football has clearly shocked him. Slot himself has admitted this. The pressing, the physicality, the relentless pace, it's a completely different animal to the Bundesliga. And here's where it gets really interesting from a tactical perspective. Slot has a massive decision to make at Stamford Bridge. Does he persist with a proper number 10 like Wirtz, sacrificing defensive stability for creative potential? Or does he revert to the more industrious Dominik Szoboszlai, the player who helped Liverpool grind out result after result last season? Carragher's already made his feelings clear. Right now, I think he needs to come out of the team. Liverpool go back to what they were last season, and then go from there. That's a former Liverpool legend essentially saying bench your £100 million signing after just 2 months. That's how bad things have gotten. The problem is not just Wirtz though, it is the ripple effect his struggles are having on the entire team structure. With Alexis Allister in and out of the lineup due to fitness issues, Wirtz hasn't had the midfield stability around him to flourish. He has been asked to operate in a system that is simultaneously trying to accommodate him while also dealing with injuries and form issues elsewhere. It's a perfect storm of circumstances, and unfortunately for Wirtz, he's at the center of it. Problem number 2. Cody Gakpo's dramatic decline. Remember when Cody Gakpo looked like he was finally ready to establish himself as Liverpool's first-choice left-winger? Preseason was magnificent. The first 2 Premier League games saw him directly involved in 3 goals. Everything pointed toward this being his breakout campaign. Gakpo has become painfully, almost comically predictable. Every defender in the Premier League now know exactly what's coming. He's going to receive the ball on the left, take a touch or 2 to set himself, then cut inside onto his right foot looking for a shot or a pass. That's it. That's the entire playbook. And here's the thing that makes this so frustrating for Liverpool fans. This isn't new information. Luis Diaz, the man Gakpo was supposed to replace after his move to Bayern Munich, had similar tendencies. But Diaz had the pace, the trickery, and the sheer unpredictability to make it work. Gakpo doesn't. Not right now, anyway. The Dutchman's demotion to the bench for the Crystal Palace game was entirely predictable. What wasn't predictable was just how ineffective he'd look when he came on against Galatasaray. There was no spark, no invention, no sign that he understood the urgency of the situation, and now Slot's in a bind. With Ekitike expected to miss the Chelsea game through injury, Gakpo is likely going to get another opportunity to prove his worth. The manager can't start 17-year-old Rio Ngumoha against his former club in such a high-pressure situation, even though the teenager looks utterly fearless every time he steps on the pitch. So Gakpo gets another lifeline, but how many more can Liverpool afford to give him? Problem number 3, the Alexander Isak injury and involvement crisis. Let's talk about the other big money signing who's struggling to make an impact. Alexander Isak's summer strike against Newcastle finally forced the Magpies to sell him to Liverpool, but his complete lack of preseason is haunting both him and his new club. 1 goal in 5 appearances, and that came against Championship side Southampton and the Carabao Cup. Not exactly the explosive start Liverpool fans were hoping for when they celebrated beating Manchester United and Arsenal to his signature. But here's what really worries me about the Isak situation. It's not just that he is not scoring, it's that he's barely involved in games at all. Against Galatasaray, he came on with half an hour to play. Wirtz immediately created a glorious chance for him with a lovely ball over the top. And then, for touches total in 30 minutes of football, that's not a striker struggling to find the net. That's a striker who's completely disconnected from his team's attacking patterns. Either Isak doesn't understand where he needs to be, or his teammates don't understand how to find him, or both. Whatever the reason, it's deeply concerning. The irony is that when Wirtz and Isak were pitched together during the 3-2 win over Atletico Madrid, they actually linked up quite nicely. There were glimpses of understanding, moments where you could see how devastating this partnership could become once Isak regains full fitness and rhythm. But we're 7 games into the season now, and Liverpool need results immediately. Slot can't afford to wait for Isak to eventually come good, especially not with Ekitike injured and essentially no other striking options available. Problem number 4, Alexis Mac Allister still playing catch-up. If there's one player Liverpool desperately need back to their best, it's Alexis Mac Allister. The Argentine was arguably their most consistent performer over the previous 2 seasons. The kind of player who never had a truly terrible game, who understood the role perfectly, who provided the perfect blend of defensive steel and creative intelligence from midfield. But right now, he's nowhere near that level. The plan was simple, and Mac Allister's 2020-25 campaign early to ensure he'd be ready for the first day of preseason. Fresh legs, full fitness, ready to dominate from game 1. Except it didn't work out that way. His nagging muscular problem took longer to heal than expected. And as Slot eloquently put it, Mac Allister is walking behind the music. He's started all 5 Premier League games, sure, but he hasn't lasted more than 65 minutes in any of them. When he came on for the final half hour in Istanbul, he looked miles off the pace. Not just rusty, genuinely unable to cope with the intensity. And this creates a massive dilemma for Slot ahead of the Chelsea game. There have been understandable calls to go back to basics to restore the midfield trio of Allister, Ryan Gravenberch, and Dominic Szoboszlai that was so effective last season. But how can you do that when one-third of that partnership isn't physically ready? Starting Allister at Stamford Bridge in his current condition feels like a gamble. Not starting him feels like admitting Liverpool can't beat top opponents without him. It's a lose-lose situation. Although, to be fair, Curtis Jones was one of the few Liverpool players to perform an acceptable level against Galatasaray, so maybe that's where Slot finds his solution. Problem number 5, the fullback uncertainty. Let's move to the flanks, where Liverpool's problems somehow get even worse. The club thought they solved their fullback issues by signing Jeremie Frimpong from Leverkusen to replace Trent Alexander-Arnold. The Dutch-born Ghanaian was electric for Leverkusen, bombing up and down the right flank with seemingly endless energy. But in a Liverpool shirt, he's looked defensively vulnerable and worryingly one-dimensional going forward. And that is when he has actually been fit. A hamstring injury has already ruled him out of 2 league games. Then there's Conor Bradley, who was supposed to provide competition and depth. The young Irishman has ability, no question, but he has also got an annoying habit of picking up silly bookings that either get him suspended or limit how aggressively he can defend. It's the kind of immaturity you'd forgive in a teenager, except Liverpool need reliability right now, not potential. The situation has become so desperate that Slot experimented with playing Szoboszlai at right back against Galatasaray. On the left side, things are barely better. Andy Robertson showed obvious signs of decline last season, yet there's genuine talk of him being recalled for the Chelsea game. Why? Because Milos Kerkez, the summer signing who was supposed to replace him, hasn't settled at Anfield any better than Frimpong has on the opposite flank. So Liverpool go into a crucial game against Chelsea, a Chelsea side whose main threat without Cole Palmer will come from the flanks, with uncertainty at both fullback positions. That's not a recipe for success, that's a recipe for disaster. Problem number 6, the Ibrahima Konate conundrum. And now we arrive at the biggest problem of all. The one that keeps Arne Slot awake at night. The one that might define Liverpool's entire season, Ibrahima Konate. Where do we even begin with this? Konate's contract is expiring, and there were hopes he'd use this season to prove he deserves a significant pay rise. Instead, he's demonstrating exactly why Liverpool tried so hard to sign Marc Guehi from Crystal Palace. And speaking of Guehi, that collapsed transfer is looking more and more like a potentially devastating sliding doors moment in Liverpool's season. The contrast at Selhurst Park last weekend was brutal. Guehi was coping with everything Liverpool threw at him before setting up the winning goal. Konate, meanwhile, was getting absolutely dominated by Jean-Philippe Mateta. Then came Istanbul. A typically sloppy pass from Konate led directly to the chance that resulted in Alisson picking up an injury. That's not just a mistake, that's a game-changing error that could have long-term consequences for Liverpool's season if their first-choice goalkeeper is now facing a spell on the sidelines. The damning truth is this: Konate is making at least one major error in every single game right now. Not small mistakes, not positional errors that get covered up by teammates, significant, costly errors that are directly leading to chances and goals for opponents. If Joe Gomez is fit, and that is always a massive if with Gomez, he should start ahead of Konate against Chelsea. That's not reactionary, that's not disrespectful to Konate's abilities, that's just acknowledging reality. Right now, the Frenchman is a liability. The Chelsea Showdown. So that brings us to Saturday, Stamford Bridge. Chelsea versus Liverpool, a fixture that would normally have neutrals salivating with anticipation. Instead, Liverpool fans are approaching it with genuine dread. Chelsea, despite their own inconsistencies this season, will sense blood. They'll have watched those same games we've all watched. They'll have seen Konate's defensive fragility. They'll have noticed how easily Liverpool can be countered when Wirtz loses possession. They'll be targeting those uncertain fullbacks with wave after wave of attacks. Arne Slot has 3 days to fix problems that have been building for 2 months. 3 days to restore confidence to a squad that's suddenly looking brittle. 3 days to make tactical decisions that could define his Liverpool legacy. Does he stick with Wirtz and hope the German finally clicks? Does he risk Allister from the start despite his fitness concerns? Who plays at fullback? Does Konate retain his place? These are the questions Slot needs to answer. And he needs to get them right, because 3 consecutive defeats would represent not just a bad run of form, but a genuine crisis that could derail Liverpool's entire season. Final thoughts. Look, I'm not here to pile on Liverpool or Arne Slot unnecessarily. The manager won the Premier League title in his first season. That alone buys him credit and patience. But Carragher is absolutely right when he says Slot now has to really earn his money. The £400 million summer spending spree was supposed to elevate Liverpool to new heights, to add that extra quality that could make them genuine Champions League contenders again. Instead, they've lost defensive solidity without gaining enough going forward. They look disjointed, unbalanced, and increasingly unsure of their identity. This is still a squad packed with quality, but it requires big decisions, brave decisions, potentially unpopular decisions. Benching £100 million signings, dropping experienced internationals, trusting youngsters in high-pressure situations. The question is whether Slot has the courage to make those calls, and whether he makes them in time. So over to you in the comments, Liverpool fans. What would you do if you were Arne Slot? Who would you start against Chelsea? And neutrals, do you think Liverpool are in genuine crisis, or is this just a temporary blip? Let's get a discussion going. If you enjoyed this deep dive analysis, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our post-match reaction after Liverpool play Chelsea. Because something tells me that reaction video is going to be absolutely crucial. Until next time, thanks for watching, and let's see if Arne Slot can turn this around.